sorry. Hey y'all, it's Becky here from the Beccasphere, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Becky, and every Tuesday and Thursday we talk about the climate here. The problems, yes, but the solutions, yes. So if that sounds like something you would like to do, go ahead and click that subscribe button below, hit the like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And today we are going to talk about Fox News' coverage of Earth Day. And a little bit of coverage that happened more recently as well, because oh my gosh, the special. So yeah, today we're going to talk about Fox News' coverage of Earth Day and kind of go over some of the points that they covered on Earth Day, and also just kind of have a discussion a little bit about the role of journalism and like what their responsibility is to truth versus opinion and biased truths and all that kind of stuff. This video is going to be a little more of just kind of a train of thought sort of thing, so let me know what you think in the comments below about this video structure as well, and about the topics that we cover, because I would love your opinion on them. A little, again, background about me, just in case you are new here. I have a degree in environmental science and journalism with a minor in biology. Almost went marine biology, but didn't quite get there, hence the jellyfish picture. And so that's my background in journalism and environmental science. So with that, it was especially interesting for me on Earth Day to see how Earth Day was covered by certain media outlets. Now, to be perfectly honest, a lot of media outlets, I was impressed. This year, I thought they did a really good job. Some of the honorable mentions, I would say, is actually CNN, and I know that's going to just make me come off as like a super liberal folk, because obviously if I'm crapping on Fox News and praising CNN, you know where I am. But honestly, the reason why I'm saying that is just because they did dedicate a whole section of their coverage for Earth Day. They did a lot of like docu-series, like in every single format they covered it, and they even have their own climate beat in particular, and that climate beat has really good Instagram posts and all that kind of thing. So I've genuinely been impressed by CNN's climate coverage, honestly. And there are a lot of other good mentions too, like Now This from Facebook. There was actually a lot of good coverage from many different news organizations about Earth Day and focusing on the overall issues. And in that coverage, it was more in depth than I had seen it before. For one thing, it went far beyond just the is climate change happening, which is the usual thing that we see every single year. Instead, they talked a lot about the solutions that are available to us, and I think that is excellent direction for coverage, because if we are only talking about the problems of the issue, then it's just going to be a depressing issue and it's going to be tragic and nothing will come of it. Like, honestly, you have to provide the solutions, but you have to provide solutions in what is considered solutions journalism, which is you talk about the solutions pros and cons. So you're kind of analyzing the possible solutions out there. So it's positive in the way that it is covering what solutions are there, but you're still taking that journalistic approach of looking at both sides of the argument when we're talking about the solutions. And that's the thing with climate change, is it's not that, for one thing, climate change should not be a politicized issue straight up, because we're actually just talking about the viability of our Earth. You know, kind of important. It's not that there aren't any arguments to be made within the climate change discussion. For example, what are we going to do to solve the issue? How are we going to go about solving the issue? Are we going to take more of a market-based approach? Or are we focusing more on federal government? Are we focusing more on individual and community approach? There's a lot of different discussions, productive discussions that can be had when it comes to climate change adaptation and mitigation. And a lot of the news organizations during that time, and in addition to the overall International Climate Conference, was very productive in moving the overall national and international conversation around the issue. But we did have some stragglers, and we're going to talk about those stragglers today, particularly Fox News. So according to this graph that you can see here, you can see that Fox News by far has the vast majority of its audience that doesn't believe or doesn't really care about the issue of climate change as compared to other news organizations. And this is obviously partially to do with the fact that it has become a politicized issue, but one could argue that it's a politicized issue because of news organizations like these that are making it seem more politically charged than it should be. Okay, so those are the 3 tweets, but don't worry, the website does have more, so let's go and look at the website. Oh, and another thing that's interesting is when I was looking up those numbers for Fox News climate change coverage sort of audience thing, I saw a post on the Daily Beast that says James Murdoch slams Fox News and News Corp over climate change denial. Now, I wouldn't normally trust the Daily Beast for things, but that's pretty dang funny. So if you don't know, James Murdoch is the son of Rupert Murdoch, who is one of the founding producers of Fox News. And even the founding family is in disagreement with Fox News' coverage, or at least the son is. James, take it over. If you don't like it, take it over. I'm just saying. And I would love to not have this be an issue, like that I don't have to worry about whatever Fox News says. But here's the thing. Fox News has the largest audience out of the top 3 news organizations, Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. Fox News is the largest. So, unfortunately, what they say really does matter when it comes to climate change communication. So that is why we are going to talk about their coverage for Earth Day, and as well as a couple other things that they recently talked about. So let's go ahead and get right started. I'm saying weird things today. Get started. So the first thing that I like to check is, what did they tweet about? Because again, as much as I would love to think that Twitter doesn't matter as much, it does. Because, like for example, the last presidency ran its whole thing on Twitter. So we first shall look at how much Fox News tweeted about climate change on Earth Day. And they did so 3 times. And I'm going to show you these gems here. So, gem number 1, America's biggest environmentalists and their private jets. This is not a new one. Like, why are we still... You can't complain about society if you're in society. Like, what? If that's the case, no one could ever talk about anything. The hypocrisy dilemma in the environmental movement has got to go, because it's the most unproductive thing. You can talk about plastic pollution if you have ever used a water bottle. A plastic water bottle. Like, no. Come on. We know the world is completely covered in plastic. My chair is plastic. Hate to tell you. But my headphones, plastic, But that doesn't make it so I can't talk about the issue. And just the same way, if a politician has a private jet, which I'm sure has been in his family for, I don't know, probably at least like 20 years or whatever. Or if, for example, which is another argument that came up later on, they really love to hate on John Kerry in particular, because he is one of the most wealthiest appointees of the Biden party, so naturally. But another recent argument was that he only recently divested from fossil fuel stocks. Okay, fair enough. All right, sure. Had I wished that he had done that earlier, especially since he has had other climate background, yeah, I would say that is a moral dilemma a little bit. But does that negate him from having any authority on the issue that he has focused his political career on for quite a long time? No, I don't think it does. If anyone's going to be upset about that kind of thing, it would be the activists who feel like the Biden administration isn't doing enough. It's not going to come from people who are still making people question whether or not it's even an issue. It's kind of convenient how Fox News chooses when and when not the issue is worthy of that kind of backlash. I just kind of think maybe, let's talk about the possible solutions. Like, what do you got? What do you got, Fox News? Tell me what solutions are conservatives coming up with. Let's have a competition, a productive conversation and competition around this topic and what needs to be done with it, instead of just arguing whether or not it happened. So, second tweet, Biden avoids confronting China over climate in Earth Day speech with world leaders. So we had pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. And you think that we would still have the moral standing to confront China over the issue when we're the ones that pulled out? Why? And we finally got all the world leaders together. We should immediately just like call them out and shit on them, because that's definitely going to make them want to come back to the table. Why would that ever be productive in negotiations? Yeah, honestly, China should maybe be confronted by it, but again, do we have the moral standing to really be doing that right now when we left the Paris Climate Accord and we're the historical largest emitter? Like, again, yes, China is currently the largest emitter, and they do need to be held accountable and make sure that they maintain their promises to reduce carbon emissions, or yeah, we're going to be kind of messed up. But does that mean that the US has no responsibility for their own emissions and making sure that they seem like an actual true player in the game? I think we should probably start by just making a promise that we're not going to leave again. But, you know, maybe that's just a weird take on my part. You let me know. Tweet number 3. So you can tell so far we are having a super productive conversation about climate change. All right, third one. Left-wing group dumps cow poop at White House entrance, demands Biden takes action. Now, for clarification, it's actually manure, you know, like what you use to garden and that kind of thing. I should honestly look up why they chose to do that, because I'll be honest, like, activists, I appreciate you guys so much. I mean, obviously we wouldn't be here without you. But do we really need to be dropping manure on the White House when they're finally actually addressing climate change for the first time? I don't know. Like, I don't really think that was all that productive, and it really gave easy fuel to the fire for these guys. Like, I'm just saying. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that, because it's a whole thing. But bottom line, those were the 3 pieces of coverage. Notice the only remnants of coverage about the international talk was just saying that Biden didn't confront China. Those are the only 3 things that they felt were important to talk about for the day. Not that, you know, we literally had China and India and Russia and the US all having a productive conversation about a global issue. Like, I'm sorry, but come on, that's kind of, what? And also all the other events that happened that day, like, there were so many things that happened on Earth Day. Honestly, I get so stressed out on Earth Day because there's too much to cover and not enough time. And I will make another video that talks about all the things that happened on Earth Day, because there's so much. And I also need to do a video on the April climate recap, so they'll probably be the same video, just saying. This is not a productive conversation. What would have been a productive conversation from Fox News is collecting what the conservative side has to say about climate solutions. I want to hear a productive conversation from conservatives about what they think should be done about climate change. And no, not just the same mantra of nuclear and market. Market. We need a little more than that. He's so cute. Yes, those are important places to focus some of the energy on, but what about, for example, talking about climate adaptation in the military bases, talking about the areas that are going to be flooded and what might need to be done. If you want it to be only a state-based sort of planning, okay, well, what are the Republican governors doing in their states that are experiencing extreme weather events? I would love to know these things. And we don't know those things because there's a huge gap in coverage on the conservative side, which also makes me go, hey, conservative people, this is your news. So here are a couple other headlines for Earth Day. So we have Tom Cotton on AOC blaming climate change on racial injustice. I wonder what that's about. Let's take a look. Okay, so even though the title is called Tom Cotton on AOC blaming climate change on racial justice, they then proceed to not talk about anything having to do with that. Like, they talked about, like, the most recent shooting, but that has nothing to do with the title. This is a very, very poor header. I'm disappointed. They don't get into the topic that the header says until 4 minutes and 40 seconds in. So yeah, bad headline, not helpful. All right, let's finally get into what actually he has to say about it. So, okay, here's what I asked for, right? Conservative, what is he, a governor? Senator of Arkansas, talking about climate change, but talking about AOC's blaming of climate change on racial justice, which already I can tell it's going to be a charged topic.
Meanwhile, it is Earth Day, Senator, and you are hearing a lot from Democrats on their plans for climate change and what they plan to do to address what has been a key priority for this administration. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is now saying that climate change, that race it has had a big to do with climate change as a result of it. Listen.
We must recognize in legislation that the trampling of indigenous rights is a cause of climate change. The trampling of racial justice is a cause of climate change, because we are allowing people and we are allowing ourselves to we are allowing folks to deny ourselves human rights and deny people the right to health care, the right to housing and education.
Senator, is climate change the result of racial injustice?
So just to clarify, AOC said that a factor of what causes climate change is racial justice, not that racial justice causes climate change. You see that little twist that she just did? Good setup.
I'm not exactly following that logic, Sandra, but what I'm worried about denying people is a right to earn a living. And Joe Biden has announced that he wants to cut all of our carbon emissions in this country in half in just 9 years by 2030. To give you a sense of how radical it is, that would be the equivalent of taking every car in America off the road, shutting down every power plant. That would kill millions of jobs in the oil and gas sector, in mining, in transportation.
He thinks that Democrats are so evil that they want to shut everything down, don't provide any alternatives at all. We're just going to live in the dark ages again, people. What? No, we're going to transition. Does he know what transition means? Transition means moving from one thing to another. We're not going to just stop one thing. That doesn't make sense. No. So, yeah, so I don't think he quite understands. Maybe he just needs to talk with some more people about the issue, honestly. This is, first of all, something that can easily be looked up, especially having to do with the racist justice side. So what AOC was talking about was that by ignoring all the knowledge presented by those who lived on this land before us, and instead just blowing through it and not taking any ecological stability into account, that then hurt the planet and pushed us in a bad direction. And we are seeing that in many other countries too, where because they did not listen to the people that were originally grown up and living for generations in that location, that, shocker, they did not use the area well. And also, there is definitely a whole racial injustice dilemma within climate change, but that's where really what she was referring to with that.
At a time when the United States leads the world in carbon emissions, even though we properly left the Paris Climate Accord, we still continue to lead the world in carbon emission reductions.
We don't lead the world in carbon reduction at all. That's just false. That is just false. I think, yeah, almost everywhere else is doing better than us with that, except for probably like China and India. But India is even really working on moving towards renewable energy where development was not already there, and just kind of skipping fossil fuels in general. So, no, we are definitely not leading the world in reduction by a long shot.
Who leads the world in carbon emission growth? It's China. And yet again, Joe Biden is turning a blind eye to what our adversaries are doing and blaming America for this problem.
Also, no. If he was only blaming other countries and not addressing them, then why is he having an international climate conference?
When in fact, America is the world leader in carbon emission reductions.
It would seem for the Democrats that everything is about climate change. The Joe Biden climate program.
Finally they are focusing on climate change. Finally. We're very happy about that. The rest of the world that believes it's an existential threat.
The Joe Biden climate program certainly takes us way left.
It shouldn't be considered left. Okay, so here's the thing, is that yes, the solution, a big option of the solution, it has a lot to do with federal regulation. And yes, that is traditionally left, Democrat, because more government regulation and control is more traditionally Democrat, right? But here's the thing. We could have easily gone the Republican route of reducing greenhouse gas emissions using a free market system with just incentivizations. But we should have started that in the 80s. The problem is that because we didn't, instead we just continued to make the problem worse. We are now at the point where we cannot just rely on only the free market system to regulate itself out of this issue. We now need a much larger solution than that.
For environmental activists, we have some interesting video that we want to show you here. You probably can't see it, Senator, but it's a group of environmental activists outside of the White House with pink wheelbarrows of manure. Now, I take it this is garden manure and not the raw stuff. Outside of the White House there at 17th and Pennsylvania. They dumped a bunch of it right there at E Street and 17th. So as radical as the agenda may seem, these people do not believe it's radical enough.
Oh, is this the Extinction Rebellion? Oh. Okay, so we're gonna move back on that one in a sec, but gotcha. So yeah, again, I support activism. I think that it's a great way to move a country, but if there's already good things happening, I kind of think that it's not productive to put shit on their ground. I'm just...
Well, John, we both believe that Joe Biden's plan is a farce. I just think we have different reasons for believing so.
I also agree that you have different reasons for believing so. So, all right, you know, he's kind of right. Honestly, if the Extinction Rebellion is doing that, then they clearly don't think that Joe Biden's plan is enough. But he thinks it's a farce because he doesn't think that it's a problem at all, and that the only way to solve climate change is to throw people back into darkness. I think that's what he thinks is the solution, and so therefore climate change is not even an issue, because if it was an issue, then I wouldn't want that solution. I think that's where his logic goes, but it's really hard to follow.
Senator, I guess I could just conclude by asking you, you've seen so many of these big financial firms. They've made big public commitments to be net zero emissions by 2030. In recent days, you've seen some of them back out of that, not prepared to even commit to that. While it looked good publicly, now you've got the Biden administration saying that they're really going to be leaning on these private companies in a big way also to fund a lot of this.
Well, I think by leaning on them, Sandra, they mean extorting them with the threat of higher taxes and more regulation if they don't put the power of their businesses behind Joe Biden's far-left progressive agenda, which the government should never do. But, you know, a lot of these corporate CEOs have kind of been asking for this.
You know, I believe that's called the carrot and stick approach. And as I mentioned before, the free market doesn't seem like they want to regulate themselves, hence what she was mentioning with them saying great things and then pulling back. So that's why it doesn't seem like the carrots worked. So Biden might want to be trying the stick, which in that case would be raising taxes on unfavorable behavior. Yeah, that's called market regulation. Okay, but that doesn't mean that he's killing the businesses or that the businesses don't have an opportunity to change for their own economic benefit, which really that is, if they're not seeing the economic benefit of transitioning to cleaner energy, to more sustainable practices, then they're going to see it in 5 years. It's just smarter for them to just start moving now. It would have been smarter for them to moving a long time ago, but now that we're especially starting to already see effects of climate change, they really don't have much longer to stay on this route. They're just kind of making the problem worse until they transition. So it's not Biden's far-left progressive agenda. It is just maintaining the stability of our planet. What do you mean the government should never do that? What is the role of the government? I believe it does involve something of the sort of regulating businesses. I mean, we kind of both agree on the monopolization of something such as social media, and we're kind of both on board, both parties on board with making it so those monopolies are not possible. So, okay, so that was another climate change coverage, and yep, it was disappointing. I mean, I'm glad that they're at least talking to governors about it, but for one thing, they're not even asking the right questions. They're not bringing anything to the table. Let's put it that way. Like, what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting that climate change is not a problem? Because if you're suggesting that, Senator Cotton or Governor Cotton or whatever your name is, then go ahead and just say that upright, because that would be so much easier for us to say that upright. But you're not going to do that because you know that it's not a good look if you were to just say that climate change isn't happening. So instead, we're just going to poo-poo every option that is presented because we don't have any options of our own, because honestly, I don't think we think that climate change is happening. Or that it matters to us anyways. Okay. Alright, now we're looking at the Ingraham angle, I believe it's called. I have honestly never heard of this. I feel like it's a much less one that people talk about than like Tucker Carlson and such. But yeah, so what's her name again? Its last name's Ingraham. Is her first name Terry? I think it's Terry. Okay, Terry, let's see what you gotta say.
Now, fresh off declaring that America is a systemically racist country that brutalizes black people, President Biden is urging the world to follow our lead on what the left moves to frame as the moral issue of our time, global warming.
Wow. Boy, that was a roller coaster. Oh my gosh. So are you saying, Terry, that there's not racism in this country? Are you saying that? Because that's not a good look. Okay, so she starts by implying that that's false. Let's talk about this blonde to blonde. Racism is happening in this country, and that is an issue. But also, just because we are having domestic issues doesn't mean that we have absolutely no foreign influence about anything else. Especially when we are the historically largest emitter.
We must try to keep the Earth's temperature and to an increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is a moral imperative, an economic imperative, a moment of peril, but also a moment of extraordinary possibilities.
That sounds great. What could she possibly say that's bad about that statement?
But serious question, how does a rotten, racist, unjust society such as ours have any moral standing to order other countries around. You ever think about that for a moment?
We're not a rotten, horrible country. We're not. We have issues. We're made of humans, and humans have issues. Crazy. Yeah, so also, we're not ordering other countries around by hosting a conference. I don't recall hosts turning into dictators quite that fast. And also, it is a moral and economic issue. Moral, he's so cute. I'm sorry. Moral being that if we don't do something about it, then our kids and grandkids, not to mention, frankly, us, because it's here, are going to face a more extreme and dangerous world than we were brought up in. And that is the wrong way that humanity is supposed to be going, because we're supposed to be getting better. But we can't get better when the world starts to kill you. But here's the thing. It is a moral issue because, you know, if we don't do something about climate change, then one, it's going to impact minorities and poor people and people with disabilities and women and basically everybody who has not majorly contributed to this issue. That also sounds bad. Okay. But here's the thing, it is a moral and economic issue. Moral being that it is going to impact the people who have least created the issue, such as developing countries. People that either have had a significantly less impact on this issue or have a greater chance of being impacted by that issue with no fault of their own, they are the ones that are going to be more impacted by the issue. It's also an economic issue because, first of all, we are relying on a form of fuel that is finite. So even if climate change wasn't an issue, which it is, then we would need to eventually switch over to another form of fuel generation or energy generation anyways at some point because it is a finite resource. In addition to that, we are seeing already extreme weather events heavily impacting our nation and the world as a whole. I will put up here what the number is for the cost of extreme weather events that are made worse by climate change have cost the United States recently. That's not pretty. So why would we not take preventative measures and reduce the cost of existence rather than having to constantly pay the catch-up game? Because either we're going to pay for the preventative measures of climate change, or every year we are going to increasingly have to pay more for picking up where the natural disaster dropped us. And I don't know about you, but I rather prevent or prepare than dealing with it once it's there.
Because if Democrats truly believe what they've been saying about America, then we are in no position to claim the moral high ground on climate change or any other issues for that matter.
We are not declaring the moral high ground. I don't think he ever said we're declaring the moral high ground. I'm pretty sure the majority of countries that he's talking, well, obviously the ones that showed up for this conference, believe that climate change is an issue, and it's frankly glad that the U.S. is back on board with the issue because they knew that without the U.S., the historically largest emitter, the second current largest emitter, being on board, we're not going to be able to prevent it, just like we aren't going to be able to prevent it if China and India aren't on board. But they are on board, so it was really us that were floundering.
Likewise, why would any nation follow the lead of another government if it can't even master hosting a Zoom meeting?
Really? This is just a stupid low blow. You think that if the Trump administration was hosting this conference that they also would have screwed up too? Honestly, I'm pretty sure even tech companies have screwed up the whole Zoom process. We all suck at it. Humans don't Zoom well. We know this.
They're even less convincing when they echo.
Convincing of what?
Look, you can ignore all their lofty verbiage, even when they're not having the tech problems, about saving the planet and global obligations, and realize just one thing. If you don't think of anything when you watch this nonsense, think about one thing. Biden's plan to cut carbon emissions by 52%, it's really just a plan to cut your standard of living.
What? No! In fact, if we do it right, if we do it well, it will actually up our standard of living. She's acting like fossil fuels don't also have other issues associated with them, such as air and water quality issues around the plant sites.
This is a massive climate con, and we have to expose it step by step. Now, climate con number one. The recycled Obama-era promise of a green jobs revolution.
I see an opportunity to create millions of good-paying, middle-class union jobs. I see line workers laying thousands of miles of transmission lines for a clean, modern, resilient grid. I see workers capping hundreds of thousands of abandoned oil and gas wells. I see auto workers building the next generation of electric vehicles.
Now, this is truly sick. Thousands of American workers are going to be leaving their once good-paying jobs in the oil and gas industry to go traveling around the country, capping off the very wells that used to put their kids through college. That'll be great.
What a mind shift. Wow. Boy, the dots that she connects are just mind-boggling. Just because those oil fields help put those people's kids through college doesn't mean that they still need to stick around. They don't have any obligation to the unfeeling and unthinking oil wells. And also, why do you think that jobs being suggested by Biden are going to pay less than the fossil fuel jobs? You have no proof on what the salary will be. So that is just, it's beyond an assertion.
Biden's climate agenda is going to create millions of jobs, all right?
Yeah.
In China.
No.
Even the New York Times admits this inconvenient truth.
Actually, let's see what she said.
Biden's plan is likely to be an economic boon to China, since the U.S. still relies almost entirely on Chinese manufacturers for low-cost solar modules. And they have increasingly shifted to Xinjiang, where the CCP may have detained more than 1 million or more Uyghur minorities in camps, where they face torture, indoctrination, and coerced labor.
Here's the thing, is that the creation of jobs in one country doesn't mean that there can't be creations of jobs in another country too. But also, what the New York Times is talking about is it's talking about how right now a lot of our manufacturing is in China. And yeah, that is a problem. If we do want to have independence in every sense of the word, then we do need to move more of our manufacturing from China to the US. But here's the thing that Terry forgot to mention, is that that's also part of Biden's plan, is to move more of that manufacturing from China to the US, because he's trying to increase the amount of jobs. It's in the jobs plan. You should check it out. So it can also be a boom for China, but that doesn't mean that it won't be a boom for the US, and it will create thousands of jobs if he does do things like create jobs for capping oil and also cleaning up the air and water in areas that are by fossil fuel plants. Yeah, that would make jobs. As well as switching over from traditional gas-powered cars to electric vehicles. Yeah, that would also create jobs. Basically, this whole shift will be a huge job creator because you need people to be working these jobs in order to make the transition happening. The transition is the jobs are a backbone of that transition. And you know what? Yes, people will lose their jobs. And to those families in the future that will experience that, my heart goes out to you, because I know that is not easy and it kind of sucks. Well, very much sucks. But the only way that we can move from one form of doing things to another is if we switch what jobs are happening. And the way that Biden has been talking about doing that transition is by providing jobs to areas that have been funded by fossil fuel industries to jobs that are renewable. And that will include job training. So it's not like we're just leaving those people in the dust. And it's also not like we are forcing them to clean up the mess that was made by their employers. That's not what we're saying. We are saying that we need to transition and we don't want to leave those people behind, right? So he's addressed that, and it's kind of doesn't look good that she doesn't do enough research to recognize that that has been addressed.
Where they face torture, indoctrination, and coerced labor.
Yeah, the Uyghur issue is bad.
Meanwhile, Biden is engaged in his own form of torture by slowly hollowing out industries that American families have depended on for jobs and affordable energy, putting millions of non-slave labor jobs in America, well, out of business.
No, transitioning them. I can't stop saying that. It's not the same thing. We're not just dropping them like they're hot. We're transitioning from one form of industry to another. You know, when cell phones were made, the like, what are they called? The women who put in different lines of the telephone to other people. Reception. No, those jobs, they went out of business when we transitioned. And I'm sure there was some backlash with that, but I bet they were also, some of them possibly were trained for other jobs. Honestly, I would argue that that was less of an issue that people thought about than they're thinking about right now, to make sure that there is a just transition. We switch over technology and industries all the time. Industries grow and fail all the time. This isn't a new concept. And I bet in many of the areas where they worked by the fossil fuel plants, they experienced issues such as asthma and cancer, them and their kids, because they lived in that environment. Wouldn't it be better if they had a job that didn't cause them health problems?
Climate radicals demanded that...
Climate radicals, you mean humans? Because every human should care about this issue.
Biden blocked the Keystone Pipeline, and he rolled right over. It was a cruel attack on thousands of American workers.
It was on indigenous land. There's been a large history of oil spilling from those exact type of pipelines. Her description of what happened is not... It's a very biased description of what's happening. And you know what? I hope that her segment is advertised as an opinion piece. Because if it's advertised as an opinion piece, whatever, I guess, have at it. But also don't call yourself a journalist. I don't call myself a journalist for these kind of pieces because these are my opinions. And that's why I had in the beginning of the video, these are my opinions. Because on normal ones where they're not as much just free thought, I do a lot of research ahead of time. So, yeah, this, like, it's such a one-sided take. It's really frustrating.
Now you add to that the idiotic decision to ban new oil and gas lease sales and all the drilling on federal lands, and you have an economic catastrophe on the horizon for our country just when we need relief the most after this pandemic.
Oh, you mean relief that was in form of, the jobs plan that he proposes that you guys are complaining is too much money? Right.
Well, that brings me to Climate Con number 2. That the world is united in the climate change fight.
No nation can solve this crisis on our own, as I know you all fully understand. We have to take action, all of us. And this summit is our first step on the road.
I'd like to begin by thanking President Biden very much for bringing us all together, and of course for returning United States to the front rank of the fight against climate change. We can build back better from this pandemic by building back greener.
I have a question. If we cut carbon emissions, will he comb his hair? It's almost worth it.
Hey, you know, if that would make people cut their carbon emissions, I support.
But all the virtual hugs and the kisses and the high fives virtually, it gave way to the harsh reality that every nation, in the end, is just going to do what's best in its interest, its own best interest, except America.
We must be committed to the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities.
We in India are doing our part.
I'd like to stress that Russia treats its international commitments with the utmost responsibility.
In other words, fork over billions, or we're just not going to lift a finger on climate or anything else.
Where the heck did she even get that from? We are going to do what we need to. We're in that part right there. Where did I say give me money? Did you hear that? I didn't hear that. Did I say that? I don't know where she's getting that from, honestly. And except for America, like, we're the one that left the Paris Climate Accord. What do you mean that we are the ones that are... So she's saying that we have the moral high ground, but also we shouldn't act like we have the moral high ground. And yet we... her logic hurts my brain. If there wasn't unity on climate action, then we wouldn't be having this conference. People would have just been like, yeah, you know, I'm not going to sit in on this one. But it's the largest it's the largest international conference on this topic. What do you mean that there's no global unity? What?
But everyone's looking for a payoff. And in case you didn't notice...
Who says that?
The United States is out of money. We're printing it and borrowing it, but we're essentially out of cash. With China, though, the ransom would be in the form of huge concessions on tariffs. And this will be terrible for working-class Americans, but great, as usual, for Wall Street executives. And as for Europe, they've always been annoyed when our economy outperforms theirs, as it has before, during, and after the pandemic, at least up until now. So now, with all this opportunity for climate change reform, it's time to level the playing field.
Carbon must have its price, because nature cannot pay the price any longer. Climate action is also a massive opportunity for our economies. It is so good to have the US back on our side in the fight against climate change.
In other words, goodbye, long road trips. Hello, carbon taxes.
What? Where the heck is she getting any of this from? None of it makes any sense. But, okay, saying, hey, we're going to work on this issue. Where does it say, give me money? Where did that come from? What are you talking about? Why can't economies grow together at the same time? I'm so confused. People can have job growth at the same time. This doesn't make any sense. When a European president, or whatever she's called, sorry, European Prime Minister, I don't know, there was a title and I missed it. When someone in charge of a European country says we're happy to have the US back and we're excited for our economies, I believe that also includes the US's economy. It would be such a depressing view to think that everybody constantly always wants things out for each other. Like, yes, that happens, but that's not everything everybody's thinking about all the time, like people in Fox News are. Honestly, that's a scary life to live. It really is.
If you want to see where our gas prices are headed under Biden, check out what they're paying in the Netherlands right now. $8 a gallon.
Which is why we should invest more in electric vehicles, because guess what? Then you would have to pay less for gas.
Climate con number 3. This is all about following the science. Well, look, if that were true, Biden officials would be able to answer simple questions.
What does your modeling show?
How much will this lower world temperatures?
I don't think the modeling speaks specifically to what this bill in isolation will do.
Why are we doing this if we don't understand, haven't done modeling?
Because the jobs plan proves that we're doing more than just focusing on climate.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
Why? Okay. Why does she think that we would be able to have perfect modeling on how this exact job plan will drop carbon emissions? I mean, partially they did estimate that. I believe it was like 70% drop if we were to successfully drop carbon emissions in the sectors that are being addressed in the jobs plan. So actually we do kind of have that figure, but in the way of specifically looking at how much carbon or what our temperature increase will be, even more specific, yeah, what our temperature increase will be if we implement that jobs plan. How the hell is anyone supposed to calculate that? For one thing, we don't know if this is going to last for more than a 4-year term. We don't know naturally when it comes to how much rising temperature how much carbon emission we currently have already released, how much the Earth is going to rise. That in itself is already a range. It's either going to be, I mean, I think at this rate it's going to be probably closer to like 3 degrees Celsius or more. Like, we are really not on a good track and we need to keep it below 1.5 degrees Celsius. But if we have a range on just how much it's supposed to, or how much the Earth's temperature is going to rise just from the amount of CO2 that we have right now, then why would she think that we would have a specific number for a particular jobs plan that might not even last past 4 years on how that is supposed to help with the temperature? What do you mean that we don't know the science? We know the science, but that doesn't mean that we know everything about everything. What?
Now, doesn't this remind you of the experts who told us that COVID lockdowns were the answer? They couldn't really explain why, but they basically were just saying, trust us.
You can do a very simple Google search and find out why that's a good idea. Jesus.
But unfortunately for Biden's team, we know exactly how much his grand plan is going to reduce global temperatures. Not at all. Climate czar John Kerry really swift-boated himself on that one. Con number 4.
Yes, because I trust the New York Post that recently fired a journalist for refusing to write a story that had nothing, that didn't even exist. I totally trust them. Number 4, we should listen to the kids. Oh my gosh. Honestly, people that make this argument, I feel bad for their kids because it means that they don't listen to their kids ever. Kids are actually kind of smart. They're all they do day in and day out is listen to things happening. What do you mean they don't know anything? And also, oh gosh, I already know where she's going with this, and it's just, oh.
We should listen to the kids. It's their future after all. Now, if you're even allowed to have kids, well, they're going to be indoctrinated into critical climate theory, just like critical race theory.
Okay, first of all, if you saw, I believe it was my last video where I talked about our lack of climate education in the school. We're not even really good at indoctrinating our kids in climate change. We barely teach them it. So, what? Just, oh my God.
So if you enjoy being around surly teenagers with a know-it-all attitude, then you're going to love House Democrat star hearing witness today.
How long do you think you can continue to ignore the climate crisis, the global aspect of equity and historic emissions, without being held accountable? Sooner or later, people are going to realize what you have been doing all this time. That's inevitable. You still have time to do the right thing and to save your legacies. So my advice for you is to choose wisely.
But wait, it gets better. What happened?
So she's just not even going to comment on like what Rhoda was saying. Yeah, she does a great job of listening to kids. Oh, that's awful.
It's when you mix open borders madness, critical race theory, and climate paranoia all together in one big bowl, you get this.
My name is Shia Bastida. I am a climate justice activist born and raised in Mexico. The climate crisis is the result of those perpetuating and upholding the harmful systems of colonialism, oppression, capitalism, and market-oriented greenwash solutions. Solutions must be aligned with the fact that climate justice is social justice. But most importantly, all of these solutions must be implemented with the voices of frontline Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities as leaders and decision makers.
Sorry, my phone died, so now I have even more chords going on right now. There are a lot of chords going on right now. Hey, where was I? Oh yeah, talking about Miss Terry's take. The Terry take. Why isn't it called the Terry take? I feel like that would be a better name. Is it Terry? I feel bad. I feel like I should look up and see if her name is Terry, because if it's not, I've just been calling her the wrong name this whole time. Laura. Her name is Laura. I am so sorry, Laura. I do genuinely apologize for getting your name wrong. This is my first time watching your show. I'm afraid I'm not going to be a fan. Honestly, Chia, I think is how you pronounce it. She was actually a author in All We Can Save, the last book that we read for our book club series, and her writing was really well done. She's 16 years old, or maybe she's 17 now, but she's young, and her writing is just beautiful. Also, Greta is technically an adult now, so you can't say that we should listen to the kids for that. But also, yeah, we should listen to the kids, you know, the ones that are actually, you know, going to inherit this dying planet. Yeah. Everything that she said was just, it was spot on, honestly. It really was. There's a lot of room to break down. Honestly, I could do a whole video breaking down that one little section of what she said, but spot on, honestly. And I'm guessing it's going to scare the crap out of Laura. In
other words, prepare to pay climate reparations, people. You're going to be poorer, you're going to be less free, and you're going to be miserable.
Where the hell did you get that from what she said? Where? I'm actually going to replay what she just said, and you tell me, where did you hear that?
Climate crisis is the result of those perpetuating and upholding the harmful systems of colonialism, oppression, capitalism, and market-oriented greenwash solutions. Solutions must be aligned with the fact that climate justice is social justice. But most importantly, all of these solutions must be implemented with the voices of frontline Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities as leaders and decision makers.
In other words, prepare to pay climate reparations, people. You're going to be poorer, you're going to be less free, and you're going to be miserable. All while John Kerry continues to fly around on his private jet.
Oh my gosh, dude, she's such a fear-mongering person. This is just like, Fox, come on, guys. What are you doing with this rhetoric as your main trope? It is the most fear-mongering take ever. Why is it so hard to believe that after hundreds of years of one race being in charge of the lives of the rest of the rest of the world, and we're realizing that, oh yeah, there's other perspectives out there. Like, other people have life lessons than the ones that have been in charge this whole time. Maybe we should listen to them. Why is that such a hard idea for people to grasp? Like, it's not that hard of a take. It really isn't. And it's the same sort of thing that, we've been doing this one way of energy production for such a long time, and you know, it's actually kind of hurting us. Maybe we should switch to a different form of energy production. Why is that such a hard take? I don't understand. Honestly, like, I know it's going to be a lot of work. It's a hard transition, but it's a transition. It's not leaving people in the dark. It's not taking away freedoms. It's none of that. It's just moving from one form of lifestyle to another, and it's not going to make the middle class, if middle class still exists, white America, it's not going to make us suffer. In fact, we're probably going to benefit along with the rest of humanity by that.
But there's a silver lining here. Given how radical these proposals are, Republicans, if they play their cards right, have a huge opportunity to grow their base by focusing on how Democrats' climate plans are going to add huge burdens to our middle class. As usual, minorities and rural Americans are going to be hurt the most. And we need to convince them that a return to America First policies is the only sensible way forward. After all, they worked during Trump's first 3 years, and they can again. And that's the angle.
I am concerned that Republicans, if they continue to, more specifically, if Fox News watchers continue to be uneducated on the importance of the issue of climate change, I am concerned that the way that they vote will then help the Republican Party, specifically the part of the party that wants to pretend that this issue doesn't exist so that they don't have to act on it. And that is an issue. But our solution should not be to stop focusing on the issue, and it also should not be to cater to those who are just trying to make our progress slower. Because we've been doing that for however long we've known about climate change. I guess it would be 50 years. We've done that for the last 50 years. And it has resulted in us being in this exact position. And frankly, if we follow along with this rhetoric for another 10 years, then I really don't want to see where our planet's at. I personally want to contribute to the future of America in the form of kids. I do. But this is what scares me. It's not climate change itself. It's people like this who are continuing to perpetuate that this is not an issue that needs to be handled. And that's just disturbing. Fox News, you need to do better. You need to do better. I don't understand why this is your take, considering that climate change solutions is an economic interest, which is a top interest of your audience. Also, the military has been moving on this problem for years, which is great because they are their existence, or whatever they're called, they are one of the largest carbon emitters in the world, like military itself. And they know that climate change is an issue. They are seeing it impact their shoreline infrastructure. They are seeing how wars are getting worse due to things such as water shortages and agricultural depletion. They are seeing that firsthand, what climate change will continue to make worse in the future, and they are moving on it. So if you, Fox News, wants to cater to your audience and what your audience actually wants, then talk about climate change and talk about it in the form of solutions. Don't talk about it as if it's not happening or that it's just a political move, because it's not. It's actually just maintaining the health of our planet. So with that, I'm going to end with Fox, do better. Do better. Just do better, honestly, because your current climate change coverage in 2021 kind of sounds like maybe more like 2010. So do better. Okay, without further ado, I hope you had a great rest of your day. I hope you found this interesting. I know it comes off a little politically polarizing, but honestly, like, I would love to have a conversation with conservatives that are interested in climate change solutions about what can be done, because this whole conversation of either climate change not existing or that every solution presented for climate change is terrible is not productive and won't get us anywhere. So yeah, let's work on being more productive than that. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Remember to talk about the climate every single day because it relates to everything, because everything is connected, and to support your local news organizations. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye.